Welcome to Friday, Saturday night.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to iRacing. You guys have wanted to see this for the longest time, and finally I am bringing it back to the channel. Many of you guys may not have even realized that I played iRacing a lot back in the day. So like 2012, 2013, I managed to get myself to an A-rated license. So I was pretty good at the game back in the day, and I got my iRating up pretty high. I think it was up as high as 3K at one stage. But iRacing for me in its modern era is very, very difficult for me because I'm still racing against people who are regulars and regulars who are pretty fast with their higher iRatings. And so I'm basically like a newbie these days and having to contest up against some of the fast boys. So yeah, life is very, very difficult. But here we are on iRacing. I am doing just one race on oval in Indycar, the Dallara Dash, I think it's called, the old Indycar. Simply because I miss the Indy 500, an event which I did last year. That was the last time I was on iRacing, and it ended in spectacular fashion. But hopefully this year we can return to much better fortunes, and I can actually finish the race this time. You guys have no idea how much I'm looking forward to the Indy 500 in May, the iRacing one. So yeah, this is me dipping my toes back in the water. I'm doing, yeah, just an online race around, what's this place, Phoenix Motor Speedway. It's a bit of a more compact oval circuit, so you do have to lift and maybe brake a little bit, which definitely adds to the technical aspect of this circuit. But this is practice. We're about to get underway in qualifying. But here you can see I'm just trying to pull a couple of overtakes on some people. We just about escaped death there as we made contact at the apex. We'll get a replay of that because this was actually quite scary. Normally in IndyCar, you want to see you can't make contact, otherwise you're both gone. But we actually managed to survive without any damage as well. The damage model on iRacing is very, very sensitive, and from what I understand, it's actually been improved since the last time I got on. So the suspension is being reworked in terms of the damage. You can now have wheels like fly off your car. It's pretty intense. So hopefully we don't test that in this video, but judging by the title, that is pretty much inevitable. But here we are in qualifying. I actually managed to get pole position for this race provisionally.
Chicken flag, chicken flag.
But you have 5 minutes to set a time, and someone near the end just managed to pip us by about a tenth. So it'll be P2 for this race. We are starting at the front, which is exactly what you want in a race like this. Starting in the midfield will be absolute carnage.
One lap to green. Line up on the outside. Closed. Pit road is closed.
So here we go then. Getting ready for my first iRacing race in about a year. So if you're excited for the return of this simulator to my channel, then make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you need to see plenty more racing game content. I can't wait to get this race underway. It's all, I don't know, hopefully be redemption for the Indy 500, where
Get ready. Going
we
green.
got taken out innocently for avoiding an incident. Let's hope that that doesn't happen today. On the second, not on the second row of the grid, in second place, front row of the grid, safety car is out, and we are underway with this
Green flag.
little oval race here in Phoenix. The race leader was checking up a little bit there, and I believe I made some contact, but I think we're fine. Away we go for this race here in Phoenix. Still holding on to P2. You can see the guy behind us in the Marlboro little car is putting us under pressure. He's running out a bit wide, so he's going to lose a bit of momentum onto this next back straight. Slipstream is everything in these kind of series. And, oh, we can see someone has already perished. Make that 2, as well as we have been absolutely crunched out of the race. Look at the front left tire. It's completely gone. The steering is about 90 degrees, right hand down. There is no way, under normal circumstances, that we could get to the end of this race. But in this race there was fast repair, so that was handy. But for all intents and purposes, my race was over after that. So here's the replay. Guy on the outside was stranded. I checked up a little bit in order to just play it a little bit safe. But just like the Indy 500 last year, we get drilled from behind. The guy, he doesn't even hesitate. Just plows right through the corner and takes us out. This is really bad. Like, you can see that he's going to make contact with me, but he still keeps his foot in and takes me out. So that was my race. I think we recovered to get P8 in the end. A lot of people did die, which certainly helped my cause, but we are now going to move on to another race. This is now road racing. We are in the F3 car around Lime Rock Park with chicanes. Now this is where it all started for me on iRacing in the Mazda MX-5 Cup. The circuit was a lot different back then, 7 years ago. They now have these silly little chicanes which are very, very tight and cause a lot of incidents. But yeah, I'm back in practice, getting ready for a race. It's going to start in about 20 minutes. And there was a lot of shithousery that was going on. People crashing, people exploring the track limits, crashing into each other, demolition derby. I've got to say, iRacing practice sessions have vastly changed from when I was sweating out these sessions. Maybe we've just got a bad bunch here in this lolly, I'm not too sure. But yes, I've got to learn the car, and I've got to kind of learn the track as well, because the chicanes really add a lot of character to this track, and I have absolutely no idea which way it goes. So going to utilize the next few laps or so to get my eye in, and then we're going to jump straight into a race, or a couple of races, shall I say, with this track and car combination. But yeah, I am still A-rated. I've still got about 2.3k of iRating, so I'm still racing against some fairly competent players, and my lack of experience is well and truly going to work against me in these races. I'll just be looking to survive these ones, to be honest. Put in a better showing than what we did in the oval race.
Right side, clear.
What is this layout? I'm so confused.
My goodness, we just about avoided disaster, and even people in the game chat are saying, what the hell is this layout? I agree. This is like a Mickey Mouse layout, and here I've overshot turn one, and what's going on? Does anyone come in here to practice anymore? Or do people just come in here just to clobber each other? I'm not too sure. But anyway, I'm going to practice and see what I can do. This final chicane here is really tight.
And got a slow down penalty.
I apologise about that. We've taken out Robert Lulam there, I think. So, yeah, I overshot the chicane, kind of rejoined on the racing line a little bit, and then blew him up. So you can see the damage model is it's pretty advanced. It's pretty realistic, I've got to say. Wheels flying off everywhere. You got like little engine covers like shaking and rattling and stuff like that. I've seen rear wings, front wings fall off. It's pretty brutal. And then here we run over a bit of the curb, which I will say later you don't want to do, because it can seriously rattle your suspension, which you definitely do not want. But you can see we're still avoiding people crashing left, right and center, and that was my practice session. We now move on to qualifying. So the first chicane that we saw is really bad for the curbs. You don't want to touch those. The second chicane is actually really bad for corner cutting. It's really hard to spot the apexes a little bit here, because you can see the front nose is actually quite high. Visibility isn't that great. Maybe I need to adjust my FOV. But I found it a little bit hard to spot the apexes, and as such I really suffered for track limits there. And on my first qualifying lap here, you can see we just pushed the limits a little bit too much. Just a little bit of understeer, dipped a wheel into the grass, and then the left rear just clipped the tyre bundle and dragged us into the fence. But thankfully we have 2 laps to do qualifying, and on my second lap we managed to get a representative time in. It was only a 54.0, so not amazing. Puts us in last out of everyone that is qualified. And you might notice that that Robert guy who was crashing everywhere in practice is the only person behind us in this race. So let's hopefully not battle him in this one. But here we go for our first proper race on iRacing once again. That Indycar race that you just saw was unofficial. There wasn't enough people, I believe, in that lobby to make it count for iRating and safety rating and stuff like that. But this one will well and truly count. So I do need to keep my wits about me in this one as we get underway for the formation lap. And unlike F1, if you get tangled up on the formation lap, your car is screwed for the race. So that is worth mentioning. So we're forming up. It's going to be a rolling start. 2x2 formation to start the race. And this is just a great opportunity to warm up your tyres like this guy in front is doing.
Thanks.
Not really allowing me to overtake him, because I actually need to overtake him to get behind the number 15 car, and he's not permitting me to do that. Which is kind of cheeky, because if he keeps his position, he'll hold on to P50.
Catch the 15 car.
Wow. What an absolute twat.
The pace car is off. Be ready.
So we are out of the race before it has even begun. Away we go for the race, and we are still being towed back to the pit lane. That Robert guy was really adamant on keeping his track position. He was literally weaving all over the track. I'll give you guys a replay as just further emphasize what the hell he was doing on that formation lap. But I mean, you can't be doing that. Here's the race. Just really frustrating to be taken out of the race before it even begins. Someone gets blown up at the first chicane, which is lovely. I'm hoping for a lot of crashes now in this race in order for me to catch up and get into the battle. So here we go. Here's the replay of the formation lap. We've got this Robert guy literally weaving from one side of the track to the other. You'll notice that everyone else in the field was keeping in their lane, but this guy was not. And here I go trying to take my rightful position, and we're out. It always has to be that one guy that I am sharing the racetrack with. Here's the onboard with Robert as he starts the race. So we're going to follow on board with the Crash Bandicoot himself throughout this race. This race was actually a banger. I pressed on in this race, but we'll cut to my shenanigans later on. This was absolute warfare which goes on in this Grand Prix, which I have to show you guys. So here we are. We're on board with Robert. You might have noticed there was a crash on the first lap, and I didn't even know it was him, but it was. He sent that AlphaTauri looking F3 car a little bit airborne at the first chicane. So yeah, that was very, very interesting. But yeah, not only was this, well, he was a bit of a Crash Bandicoot, but I didn't realize that he was actually pretty pacey. He actually moves forward quite a bit in this race, so he probably had the best onboard to follow on with for the first half of the race. As you can see, he's putting a move on at turn 1, trying to go around the outside. It's actually very easy to fall off the racetrack a little bit there, and especially get dragged onto the grass, which will then carry you off into no man's land. But he moves up another couple of positions into the death chicane. Do not want to touch any of these orange bumps, orange bollard bits. So like I said, your car will not respond well to that. The second chicane, really bad for track limits. You can see all the leaders there are heavily congested there in traffic, and this is allowing Robert to catch up. He goes for a dive here into the first chicane. The purple car then gets sent to the Shadow Realm, and then Robert does what he does best and continues to cause incidents, and then I think his suspension failed. So that was pretty much the end of his race, as he actually cut out the final chicane there and then didn't slow up. So that was interesting. But we now move on to later on. One lap later, he actually got rear-ended by a purple car, so that was a bit of karma there. And I'm pretty sure that this ended his race. And in the end, I actually managed to beat him. So that was satisfying, I guess. But now, we are going to keep track of the lead battle now, because this kicks off quite massively. You can see there's about 4 cars involved. There's actually another 1 or 2 behind this, half a second back. You can see The guy in P4 gets taken out. He's gone. So now it's a four-way affair for the lead of this race. The race leader overshoots massively, cuts the chicane, and then loses all of those spots. It's absolutely chaotic, and it's only a 10-minute race. So much action in such a short space of time, and on a tiny little circuit. It really is the recipe for disaster. You can see this Florian guy. He was actually pretty speedy. You'll know about that from the next race. But then we see P2 and P3 getting tangled up with each other. Florian goes through for P3, and the guy in P5 also makes an excursion and spins off. Oh man, it's absolutely mad. And I was really, really slow in this race, and I was a lap down, and I was just, there's me. I was just benefiting massively out of all these people crashing. But I think in the end I managed to get inside the top 10 to finish off. But we follow on board now with Florian in P3. Three-way fight for the lead of the race. Who is going to bottle it next? Who is going to be the instigator of the next incident, if there is one? We'll have to wait, because we're now cutting back to my POV. You can see I'm running in P15 at the moment, and just up to my usual tricks of corner cutting, even though I'm not really corner cutting. But we had a bad run through the chicane. We ran over both of the orange parts of the sausage curb, and I actually thought that my front wing was dislodged, and it was like just riding on the floor of my car, or it was riding under my tires. That's what I thought was happening. But until I got into the spectator camera, I realized that my left rear suspension had actually failed from the secondary hit over the curb. So iRacing has really come on leaps and bounds in the last year or so, because this wasn't really a thing in the past. We can see we've now got suspension damage, possibly even floor damage, I'm not too sure, but absolutely fascinating. And it really is, iRacing truly does set the benchmark in terms of sim racing, not only just in terms of the physics. Well, the graphics leave a little bit to be desired, but just the whole online service is pretty amazing. But anyway, Florian, he gets taken out of the running for the race win, and these guys are all fighting for the win. They'd all kicked off there for P2, P3, and then this guy goes ahead and wins the Lime Rock GP in massive style with a bit of a finish flick into the infield at turn 1. And believe it or not, this was the guy who we were watching in practice. He was dislodging his car through a building. So we all got beat by him, which was very, very interesting. I had a pretty uneventful race, as you guys saw. Just coming home in P13 in the end. P14. So even worse than what I was expecting. But we now move on to the next race. This is actually filmed the next day. This is actually today that you're watching this. All the footage that you saw up to this point was filmed yesterday. So I've had a night to sleep on it, and I'm back on iRacing. And jumping on in this session, I immediately was a lot faster. I was running in the 54s in practice and qualifying. But in the practice session just prior to this lap, I did a 52.4 or something. So a significant gain in pace. And I just followed a couple of people just to see what they were doing in terms of lines and braking points, gear selection, and it really did help. And you know, after that I was able to really push the car a whole lot more. Although this lap isn't great, it's going to be a 53.2. It was still much better pace than what I was running yesterday, but I think a 52.2 or a 52.4 would have got me midfield, I think, so that would have been a great starting point for this race. But I know I have more pace than what I left on the table. So we're getting ready to start this one. Everyone fuel burning at the start, so Greta would have been very, very impressed with that development on the grid. We are getting ready to go for the final race of this video. Let's see if we can charge our way through the field. I love a top half finish, maybe a top 6.
Post car is off, time to do your job.
That would be a wonderful achievement to round out the day. And away we go for the Lime Rock Grand Prix. The biggest race of the century, you would have to say, in Formula 3 cars. Around the outside we go. We're kind of just in the middle of everyone here. As you can see, black and white car going up the inside. He tags the aqua-looking car, and we gain both of those spots just by virtue of keeping it clean. But now we're getting attacked by the red car on the inside. Someone rejoined the track on the outside, and really it's just all kicking off here in this iRacing event. You can see heading into the chicane, we get dive bombed by the Ferrari. That really compromised my line into there, so I had to, well, just accommodate for that car being there, and I got a horrific run out of there. Lost, I don't know, nearly a second to the next group of cars. And you can see I've run in deep, compromised my exit once again. A Red Bull is off, and that was a corner cut apparently, so I've had to give up 8/10 and 2 positions in order to rectify that. So I don't know, in my opinion, I feel like the track limits are very, very strict at that corner. Sometimes you feel like you could probably lose time and still get done the corner cutting. But it's just something I've got to get used to, isn't it? Side by side with the number 4 car, and we might hopefully hold this. Really hard to run side by side through there because the car is quite understeery, but we managed to make it work. Into the death chicane for the 3rd time, and it is all plain sailing for now, just about. This guy is looking pretty threatening as he dives up the inside into the final chicane. The race leaders have actually crashed, so we've got a couple of people out of this Grand Prix. We'll get a replay of that right now. Here's the action. The number 8 car getting squeezed to the inside, and then this guy is not happy about proceedings. What's funny about this crash is not the actual moment of contact itself. It's the fact that this car rolls, and then all of a sudden the aero parts just give up and just fall off the car. So yeah, iRacing, it is the benchmark, but still possibly needs a little bit of work. Again, leaders coming into contact, and then this kind of feeds into the live pictures that you're seeing with me now, catching up to this next group of cars. So dare I say, could we be fighting for a race victory on iRacing, despite being probably the slowest guy in the lobby? That would be a massive laugh. But you know, if you want to win races, first you've got to finish. So it's like everyone else is just getting involved with each other, and my lack of pace is kind of keeping me out of trouble because I'm not getting myself in a position where I can actually overtake someone. But we are getting closer now that these guys are starting to fight more and more and more. I got a bad run out of the final chicane. The blue car gets in front of us, and we are now just going to tow them down the straight and look to pick up the pieces whenever stuff goes down. You can see the Ferrari going up the inside. I've actually tagged the car on my left-hand side, and now I am the big bad villain of the race. You can see here, it was just a bit of a cluster, wasn't it? Like I had eyes for the Ferrari on the right-hand side. He on the left-hand side was braking a little bit early. He was just trying to tuck in, and initially I thought it was a netcode spin, but looking at that, you probably have to say that I actually did make contact there. So I put my hand up. That was 100% on me, but to be honest, there's not too much I could have done, because even if I would have, I don't know, if I had the hindsight, I probably would have braked a little bit earlier, but then I probably would have lost the position or even got taken out by the Ferrari. So it's a very tricky one. Very hard to avoid incidents when we're all so closely spaced together. And now, in the twilight laps of the race, my lack of consistency is starting to show here. This was something I didn't really experience in practice. Is that I believe the tyres got warmer and warmer as the race went on, and I never really strung together, say, 10 laps in practice together without either crashing or someone crashing into me. And so it meant that we were in a unique position where we were feeling what the car was doing, and gradually I could feel the car getting a little bit more happy in the rear end as the race went on. And then it got to a point in these last few laps where I just kept spinning at turn 1. It was just very unfortunate. You can see here I was turning in, and there's just no rear end. So that is something we'll need to keep an eye on in future races if we return to this combo. But despite those spins, I managed to keep it together for a lap And what I noticed was the car was actually quite fast. So the car was on edge, the tyre temps were up, but the car felt alive if you could keep it together. And that's certainly what I was doing here. The rotation was really nice. Got it really nicely through turns 1 and 2. Hitting all the apexes, got it nicely through the chicanes. Heading into here, very easy to overstep the mark and make a mistake. We actually clip all the apexes there and get a nice exit. And this is actually going to be my fastest ever lap around Lime Rock in the F3 car. Just the fastest lap of the day, essentially. It's not something too grand. But it was a clean lap in the end, and I think it was a 52.1. So 3/10 better than what I managed in practice.
There's the flag. It's over.
In the end, it turns out to be P9 in this race. So we've seen what happened to me. Let's cut back to the race leaders. This is actually a lap car who spins and then disrupts all of the leaders coming through. The race leader in the McLaren had to cut the chicane. We'll get a replay of what happened to them in just a second. But this guy has gone absolutely nutso after that incident. So here we go, on board with Florian. One of the fast boys in this lobby had nowhere to go, has to cut the chicane, and then because of that, breaks his suspension out of the race. Absolutely horrific scenes. And then we follow on board with this guy. This was the guy in P3. He then bottles it and drops down to pretty much last. And then we come home in our finishing position without a few spins along the way from the blimp camera. I kind of felt like a blimp in those final few laps, but that was my excursions. That was my escapades on iRacing for today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. There's Florian, freshly out of the pits on his repaired car, and he spun at the same time as me, so I guess I don't feel overly bad about that. But there we go. That's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. iRacing, it's got a very steep learning curve, but once you can get on top of that and really get dialed into the handling model, it is one of the most fun experiences you can have on sim racing. And that's coming from an arcade sim pleb like me. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.